All right, it's now 7 o'clock, and it is time for the newsroom. For those of you that might be joining us, welcome aboard. But I'd also like to reintroduce the guests that we have in studio. We are now joined to my extreme left by Honorable Yusuf Hassan, who's the Member of Parliament for Kamkunji. Thank you for joining us. Earlier on, we had and we still have Dr. Sam Kamau, and we also have Koki Ochieng, who are lecturers. Dr. Sam Kamau, a lecturer at Aga Khan, and Koki, a lecturer at USIU for Media and Communication. Now, before we get into the newsroom, Mheshimiwa, you were trying to set something straight in regards to two things. Number one is the issue of racism at the SGR. What is it that you wanted to say?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say that they have a serious management problem, both in terms of managing staff as well as communication. And obviously, they need to take the necessary corrective measures to address those problems and to deal with this issue before it becomes a problem that would paralyze the activities of the SGR. But I wanted to say that it is very easy for us in Kenya to rush to the racist card. In many cases, I find that even when tourists visit and some tourist misbehaves, for example, gets drunk and misbehaves and does something, it becomes racial, and it identifies negatively on his race and the country that he comes from. So I think some of the things that we are noticing in this particular
but
case...
with the SGR, it's pretty clear.
Let me finish. Let me finish. Some of the things that we're experiencing with organizations that are new, that have no contacts with our continent, may be cultural, more an attitude and a cultural clash than actual racism. So I think it is important to investigate and take the necessary action. But I think if we if we use this racial element every time as an emotive issue, we might lose investment as well as tourists, because people would think that perhaps we're not a tolerant society.
Okay, but I was going to say that with the SGR, it's pretty straightforward from the story that we have.
It should be.
When there's discrimination in terms of where you sit, I think I'm reminded of a saying, when you go to Rome, you behave like the Romans. So we'd expect that they would be like the Kenyans.
Well, I don't know the details of this particular story, but what I'm saying is that there is absolutely nothing wrong for me in my working environment, and I've worked in many countries, for me to want to sit with myself. I've worked with Asians, I've worked with Europeans. You may not even like them. Why would I want to sit with them if they don't like to sit with me? What's the big deal?
It's not really about the action sitting. It's really about the utility of space and freedom within a given space, and freedom of association. So I don't think that it's just about, me sitting with you. That's not the issue. The issue is, how does it feel? Does it give any element or sense of social injustice? Does it give a sense of discomfort? Yet when we go to visit those countries, and we visited them, we behave in a way that we don't contradict what is going on. Yeah, their culture.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And maybe, Mhesh, before we move away from that, because I want us to get into the school unrest, there was also the question, and again, about discrimination on the aspect that they're not allowed to take, they want them to sign a form where they'll not be allowed to take pictures or post them on social media. And according to Haron Dubi, the lawyer, said that is unconstitutional. Well, I think that has to be tested, because all organizations and institutions, clubs, even homes, have rules and regulations. So an institution can have a regulation to protect its integrity, its reputation. Would you be in agreement with that, them signing those forms? I don't know what kind of contractual arrangements they have with their employers. I can't speak for them. But what I'm saying that it is normal for institutions to have rules, in-house rules and regulations. Even the Standard newspaper and KTN have in-house rules where you cannot violate. And I'm a former member of the Committee for Delegated Legislation. There is a parliamentary committee that had been set up to look whether rules and regulations set up by institutions are in line with our constitution and our laws. So there is a method to test whether
this company has done is right or wrong legally.
All right, but I think the important thing here to say is where he says that these rules are supposed to protect the integrity of the company, you cannot use that to actually cover up abuse and violations of rights, which is what is happening in this particular case. So that you say that if there are, for example, the images that we saw that were actually shared, it is clear cases of violation, and I think it is important they tend to come out. The other thing is that when companies come up with these stringent rules and measures trying to control information, that is why we see a lot of leaked information through social media, but also to journalists, because the abuses need to come out. If there are violations and illegalities that are going on, they need to be brought out, and you cannot actually force employees to actually sign that kind of a document that would actually now guarantee that if there are abuses and violations that are taking place, they would actually continue.
Yeah.
All right.
Further too, I think if it is about taking photographs, we know that institutions that have high national security interest and, you know, maybe like media houses, places like studios and such.
Embassies.
Yes, embassies, you'd protect them. But really SGR, that everybody, you know, communities, I don't see what
but
is
SGR is a national security project. It is an important communication and transport system for our country and needs to be protected from our enemies.
But the Kenya Railways was there, and it is also important. I don't think that that's a justification.
All right, and I guess we'll leave that right there. But of course, I guess is a discussion that needs to continue. However, I'm sure the Standard will also continue, or the Standard Group will continue looking at this particular story. But now we want to look at our main topic for today on the newsroom, and this is to do with school unrest. We know that quite a number of schools, more than 10, have actually been recently closed, and this is as a result of students going on the rampage, some of them burning down the schools. Now, this is not the first time it's happening, and previously, when it happened, the media was largely blamed, and mainly because of highlighting this. Apparently, schools would literally, you know, it became a wildfire because they would feel like it is highlighted and giving them space to do that. So the question we're asking you this morning is, do you think media is fueling unrest in schools? I'll just look at some of your responses that have come through so far as you send them through, and as I get this question to the panel. We have Koa Frederick, who says, not really. I think the CS, Ambassador Mohammed and Professor Magoha are getting it all wrong. Such statements like, Magoha, keep burning schools, you'll sit under trees to do your exams are very reckless. Sit with the Kenyan Parents Association and evaluate where the problem is. Again, we have Samuel, who says media is not fueling unrest in schools, but media is highlighting the kind of unmentioned activities going on in schools for better action by all parties involved. So let me start maybe with you, Koki, on first of all that, and it's a question that we've handled before, whether we, the media, as we go on highlighting what's happening, may be part of the problem.
You need to tell the story. That's how media is made. You need to tell the story as it's happening. Of course, what the worry will be is that it triggers the same action in other spaces or other schools. But I think the story needs to be told, because then there's a question there's a question of what is going on in the schools. What is going on in the education sector? Because schools are supposed to be safe havens where people, or boarding schools or whatever school, is supposed to be a space that is well managed, it's supposed to be secure, it's supposed to be somewhere where our children go to learn. So we have to interrogate what are the issues that are making this kind of damage conducively happen in that environment. I'm fortunate to be in touch with many of my alumni who are teachers, and they tell me very interesting stories. One of the things that they said, we need to probe, for example. Most students who go to high school or schools, we assume that they are of the age bracket 13 to 18. But you'll find that with free secondary education, you have adults in school. What is the impact of having people who are adults in school, and how can they, you know, kind of influence what goes on in school? Secondly, these people who keep joining schools or moving from one school to another, do we question why? Are they criminals? Do we investigate why? The other very interesting thing they told me is that teachers are supervised by students. The student writes a report on how you teach, what you say, and then there's the head teacher also supervising. So the teacher is somewhere in the middle, yes, and is not a symbol of authority anymore in the school environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hesh, let me come to you on your thoughts of this, and more specifically, the bigger picture here being the balance that we need to have. Yes, we must tell the story, but at the end of the day, is there a cost element to it, and how do we balance that?
Well, I think that is an editorial decision that would probably be made by the editors of the day, depending on the story itself. But I don't think that there's a strong link between media coverage and what is happening in our schools, because some of these schools are in very remote areas where you don't even get a newspaper, or maybe there's no even electricity to watch television. So I think kids might be getting most of their information through the social media, which is not very constructive and quite open in some ways compared to the regulated media. But I think, having said that, there obviously seems to be a very serious, deep-rooted crisis within our educational system. And I think when the last cabinet secretary was in office, Dr. Matiang'i, it seems that he had done a big shake-up, and one hoped that, in fact, we had crossed the line. But it appears as if things are rotten in the state of Denmark, to the point whereby we're now in a free fall. And I think it is important for the leadership of the education department, including the minister and the hierarchy there, to take the necessary action to impose order and to make sure that, in fact, crime is not left unpunished, that there is some responsibility. But here I don't see any attempt to find the underlying problems. For example, when I was a student, I was chucked out of school at a young age because I led a strike in my secondary school. And it took me 10 years to recover from the expulsion and get back to life, go back to university and study. So 10 years is a long time,
it's a long time
in one's life. So I think we should not be messing with the lives of our children, our future leaders. The people who are going to inherit and run this country, we must be able to create a solid foundation for them to become highly educated people, to become responsible citizens. And I think we need to look at how our schools are run. And I think that's what we said when we were looking at Moi Girls, is that what has happened to the management. The other element that comes out of this crisis is the fact that there is no interreaction, there is no communication, there is no relationship between the teachers and the students. There's a very hostile, unfriendly situation in between them. And what happened to the teacher leadership? What is happening there? Has something gone wrong? I hear that what Koki says is kind of rather disturbing, that in fact the relationship has changed. It's power relationship.
Supervising the teacher.
Well, I think I would have thought that it is important to have a democratic structure where the teachers can consult, engage, and hear what the problems of the students are. So here it appears as if something is very seriously wrong, and the students are not getting the attention and the advice and the leadership that would help them to be good students and leave those institutions with the right qualification.
Okay. Dr. Kamau.
Yes, I was actually going to say the question maybe may not be whether the media is helping fuel, what is happening in the schools. Maybe the question would be whether they are doing enough in terms of reportage, especially to go to the heart of the issue. Now, I know one of the things we have said, because in the past we have seen the pattern is always the same. Second term, we have many of these strikes and fires. But we've always assumed this is related to the pre-mocks and the mocks and the exams. And perhaps that is the part of this, one of the assumptions that we may need to question. Because if that is the issue and it happens year in, year out, then what is the solution? But I think, like Madam Koki has said, and I think also Mheshimiwa has tried to look at these issues. For example, when you talk about those student evaluations, it simply means the teacher is disempowered as a symbol of authority. You remember when we were growing up, the teacher was a symbol of authority, which now in this particular case, where it could be that the student is expected to report whether the teacher actually went to the classroom. It could be that then when the teacher tries to impose his or her authority, the students, of course, are likely to evaluate the teacher negatively. But that is not the only issue. The other thing is, and I think this is part of the problem coming from the ministry, in terms of ensuring there is more stakeholder engagement in terms of involving not just the students, but also the teacher and the parents. Because what we have always seen, and we have also seen this now in terms of the statements that have come from the ministry, even yesterday, is that you just come up with declarations trying to cure the problem without fully understanding what is the issue. Because I think what we are seeing is a system of something that is deeper. Perhaps then we have empowered the students so much that they are demanding for certain rights that the schools are not capable of, giving. There are certain demands the students are making. Perhaps they are not able to address. The other issues is that the student could also be having their own challenges. And I think taking time to understand. For example, I was shocked to learn that in most schools you may find a school of about 2,000 people. There's only one guidance and counseling teacher who is supposed to take care of these students, because whenever you see a strike, it's a small group, that is able to carry out certain actions that would influence the whole school. So in terms of being able to address issues, ensuring there is more stakeholder engagement. But for me, the roadside declarations that we tend to see, and when there is, what you normally see is that every new CS in the Ministry of Education, they'll come up with a raft of measures and rules that they normally just impose without consultation, because you will say, yes, paint all the vehicles with one color. It's okay. Have, the same uniform across there. It's okay. Come up with, So when you bring out these things without actually necessary consultations to see how these things would work, I'll just pick one issue in the delocalization that we were talking about. When you actually come and give instructions that this principle has been transferred, within 24 hours, make sure you have gone to your new place. The handover part of it, what were the issues that were in place in terms of also the finances and all that. That sudden change, what it happens is it destabilizes the school. And what happens is that you are likely to see process, not maybe because the principal was so loved, but it's because there are certain issues that have been disrupted just in the process. That is why I'm saying the reforms, there are so many, and what we have seen with these reforms is that you are not very sure that it will work, but let's introduce this change. Now, I saw the latest one was criminalize, these acts in terms of, it will reflect in the, that was from the DCI. While it may look good, from the outside, but it's criminalizing the students. These are teenagers. They have their own issues, and without seeking to understand, when you just criminalize, most likely is even likely to fuel the issue more. I actually agree that the students have to appreciate and understand there should be consequences for their actions. Criminal acts ought to be punished, but I think we need to have a bigger way of looking at these issues, and the media can help us understand, is it really about exams or there are other issues?
The other leaders, head teachers now, or principals, are now like security guards, because they have to be all over the school, just making sure this is not happen. They are always in panic. What is going to happen behind the school? Teachers are advised not to be there. They just teach and come and go. Whereas when I was in school, I knew a teacher was constantly there. A teacher was constantly, checking on what we are doing. We had a teacher in control of the prefects, and the prefects were, symbols of authority, not mouthpieces or, can I say spies? Spies of the head teacher. Those are simple things, but they have a very critical impact on the child and the teaching environment. Because if you disempower the person who really should be the caregiver in that environment, then it becomes a challenge.
Okay. Mahesh, and of course here we are highlighting the media, but help us understand from an authority point of view, when statements are made by leaders like recently what we saw yesterday with one of the leaders saying that, ban them if you want. We are going to, study under schools. And I know we were talking about culture earlier on. There's a cultural aspect to it. I know where we are coming from. That, for instance, my mother would, if you broke a cup, she would tell you, in fact, go remove the ones which are in the...
and break all of them.
And break all of them. But really, she wasn't saying you do that. It was a way of trying to discourage you. So culturally, maybe what he is saying is out of anger, but where the threshold of integrity is very high, a statement like that cannot just be wished away.
Well, I think I sympathize with him because he's expressing a frustration. Because when you have spent so much money on institutions and infrastructure, to see them being blown up into pieces within seconds is quite a frustrating and annoying thing. But I think we've spent a lot of time and energy on building classrooms, in equipping classrooms, in providing textbooks. But we have not, yes, we have not looked at the human element, the social element of are these kids being brought up well? Are they getting the guidance and the support that they need? Are we listening to them and so on? So I think this is this is what I would advise the management and the leadership of the education department, is maybe to go through a paradigm change, to see how they can address the psychological, social problems that we're seeing in our schools that cannot be addressed by classrooms. I mean, you can build the best roads, you can build the best infrastructure, and if people are unhappy with their social conditions, they're going to burn them down. In fact, you see that in Nairobi a lot, that a brand new road is built with the road signs, with the sewage system, the drainage system, the lighting system, and you pass there a month later and all of them have been vandalized because people don't have ownership of it. So we should give ownership of our students. Those classrooms are theirs, those equipments are theirs, the education is for their own benefit. They need to internalize that, and there is a need to build a relationship, which I think is lacking now, between the education establishment and leadership and the students, which is very urgent and very important.
All right, Dr. Kamau.
Yeah, I actually wanted to say, and Mheshimiwa has brought up a very important point. When you talk about now going beyond the classroom, we are talking about a parenting issue, because I think quite often the parents may have, I wouldn't say abdicated their role, but left it to the teachers and maybe the Sunday school teachers to, you know, outsource their parenting role. But I think also going beyond that, for example, even the issue of religion, like you saw previously, the Catholic Christian schools used to be, they were known for discipline. Right. But I think there has been a breakdown, of course, of that even as we continue. The other thing is now the only one I would relate to the issue of exams. You know, with the recent changes that we have seen in the management of exams, the fear of unknown and the uncertainty in terms of facing the exam, what happens after that and all that, it could have contributed, you know, to this kind of anxiety. And I would support what you're saying in terms of trying to listen to the students, understand. I support the idea of course, democratization of the space and involving the students, but I would say in their welfare, not necessarily in the running of everything about the school, because I think it is in the running of the schools, like the students evaluating the teachers and all that, that is a bit of the problem. But in terms of their welfare, their concerns, their issues, making sure that you seek to understand and appreciate. For example, I'll tell you, and I told you about these roadside declarations. After the Moi Girls issue, there was this sudden declaration that became a policy issue that there should be no contact between students and non-TSC, you know, trained teachers. But you understand what happens, for example, the cooks in the school, the security guards, the matrons who are taking care of them, they're not necessarily TSC, you know, trained teachers. But when you say there should be no contact, and yet, you know, you have not exactly thought out this particular issue. Because even we saw when that issue happened, the first person who would actually be able to respond would be perhaps the matron or the boarding master, or whoever is working with the students at that particular time. That is why I'm saying, take time to listen, to understand what are the issues. The other question that I think is also important to think about, should the guidance and counseling person be a teacher? Because that's also the other thing. I said there are very few of those you might find in a big school. There is only one person for guidance and counseling. Maybe do we actually need to consider that maybe this person does not necessarily to be a teacher, but somebody who is brought to come and specifically try and help students go through these issues. These are some of the things we need to think out a little bit more. And I would say, although I know it had happened previously, what we always do, what government always does, is form a task force. Take time to understand, talk to all the stakeholders, talk to the teachers, talk to the parents, talk to the students, so that you try first to understand what is at the heart of the issue, why are they doing this? But on the other part is now coming up with solutions, because just some people thinking, sitting at the ministry headquarters, and they would think, what do we need to do? Maybe we need to bring more policemen in the, you know, in the space to make sure that we control the students. But you know, they always find a way around that. That is why I'm saying perhaps broad-based consultations and a task force, maybe you do this and make sure you get a respected and a good chair to be able to lead such a process, so that we understand the issue and fix it once.
All right, Koki, we need to develop this story as the newsroom. And so far, what has been highlighted is that this strike seemed to almost come at a time of examinations, which might be true. But the thing might be not just the examination. Is it that students are not prepared for the examinations? Is that they feel that examinations are unfair? There definitely is an underlying current. And the ministry so far has not addressed this. How do we take this story and take it deeper so that we're not just repeating what has been said previously?
Okay, I would like to maybe say that about exams, people pass exams, people fail exams, no matter what situation is. And, you know, I don't think it's really about having a mock exam, because a mock exam affects only Form 4s. So what about the Form 1s, 2s, and 3s who might be involved in these criminal acts? What about them? I think clearly, like my fellow panelists are saying, there is an issue of mental health. There is an issue of children who are in school who do not have a way to address their grievances. There is an issue where parenting is not really effective or is not complementing what is going on in school. And mental health issues are not just in schools. They are all over the place, but we take them for granted. And because the issue of mental health is stigmatized, we don't pay attention to it. It is time that Kenya as a nation pays attention to mental
health.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you have lost your senses and you're mad. It could be depression, it could be, you know, schizophrenia, it could be all those kind of diseases that trigger a few elements, like Dr. Sam says, to get together and disrupt what is going on in the schools. So, and plus, not just that, the element of substance abuse, I think those are the things that we really need to follow up as media, to be able to tell a comprehensive story, exactly what is going on. Because I don't believe in any given school environment that the whole school, you know, would participate in banning. I mean, the things that we used to ban were our books after Form 4. But I don't think that the whole school would really, you know, sit down to instigate that we should ban the dorms.
Okay. Mheshimiwa, as we wind up, there is an element that possibly has not been highlighted as it should be. And, you know, there's the saying, charity begins at home. These children, by the time they get to school, are coming from somewhere. What is their state at home? Would they be of the same character at home? Or is there something within the school that is breeding a mentality that maybe they're not getting at home? The relationship between home and school.
Well, I think the students, from my experience, even from Kamkunji, come from diverse backgrounds. For example, I have students from my informal sector that do very well and go to some of these good boarding schools. And they're there. They go to those schools to change their lives. They come from very poor communities, and education is a ladder out of that poverty. And examinations, of course, are a matter of life and death. Of course, and then there are students from middle-class backgrounds who don't really give a damn because their parents are well-to-do, and they go to those schools to have fun and maybe
pastime,
make sure that they finish their studies according to the pressure from their parents. So it's a mixed bag. And I think, having been to a boarding school myself, with students from different cultures, different languages, different religions, I think that boarding schools and institutions are formative. They create. They mold you, they shape you, your life, your behavior, and your attitude in future life. It's the boarding school, actually, that I went to that has made me the person that I am. So leadership is important. Guidance and direction is important. And I remember in those days, the institutions were authoritarian, of course. There was really no chance that you would have any word in about anything. But they knew everything. They knew your character, they knew your strengths and weaknesses, and they knew when trouble was brewing. And you would be called to the head teachers, to the principal's office, if they suspected that you were up to no good. And you would be advised. You would be told, look, you're doing this and that.
You need to stop.
This is a warning. And of course, if you don't take the warning, the punishment was harsh. And even if you were sent home, you would also be punished at home. So parents also had a supporting role for the teachers. The teacher decision was never challenged by my parents, even when it was wrong. So now, at the moment, it appears as if there's a disconnect between the parents and the teachers. And in fact, maybe the students are not getting much guidance from their parents, because parents outsource that problem. The moment you drop your child at the gate of the school, that is the end of your responsibility. You go away, and the next time you hear about it, when a school is burnt, is when you rush to the gate to find out whether things are all right or not. So I think there is a need, as the lecturers themselves, people who deal with students, more knowledgeable about those things than me are suggesting, is that we really need to look at the underlying problems, and to go from the bottom up.
Okay.
And I know it is easy because the bureaucracy and the leadership of this institution, the minister, the PS, when something goes wrong, they come under pressure. They have to respond. They have to give directions, and they have to show that they're in charge. And there's really no time in between their immediate reaction to problems to find out what the reality, what is happening. There's no time to investigate. So the leadership should take time to investigate, find out what is happening, and prescribe the right prescription for this problem.
All right, Dr. Sam Kamau, as you wrap up your closing thoughts, but also what you would expect to see the media do to develop this story so that we're not at the same place 3 months, 4 months down the road.
Well, in terms of moving the story forward, of course, what I would expect is first to help us understand and appreciate what is at the heart of this, instead of just continuing with the assumption that it is just related to the exams. But beyond that, I think we also need to get the voices, of the different stakeholders to make sure that we fully understand in terms of when we are looking for solutions and what is likely to work, to make sure that as many voices are involved, in telling this story and seeking to understand the issues. The other thing, it should also be to interrogate and test some of the policies and the principles that have been used, in the past, as some of the solutions that have worked or have not worked, and therefore we are able to question this and also hold the people who are responsible accountable to a significant extent. Finally, I would also want to say that the students are also getting bad examples from the society, from politicians. Last year and how we generally tend to address our grievances and issues. They're also getting very bad examples from society, and are likely to replicate that and think maybe violence and arson and all that is the only way to address our grievances. The last issue is I visited my former school, and unfortunately I had participated in a strike 20 years back that led to the closure of the school.
Yes.
I visited the students and I was trying to, talk to them and try and motivate them. The principal actually took me to his office and showed me actually drugs that were confiscated. One time they just decided to do some kind of inspection, and they brought a carton full of, drugs, and some of them would actually scare you. And what the principal did is that he went to the parade and said, if you do not want to be part of this school, please go. 150 students walked away. And I think perhaps some of these drastic measures, because they must also understand the relationship between their choices and the consequences that have to follow. That is important.
All right.
For me, the story is why are teachers rejecting promotions. I think that was a story I saw in the media. Yeah. Why are teachers rejecting promotions to be administrators in school? Therefore, it means there's a big issue, because it's no longer about managing your little bread or your family. It now becomes a security risk or a security issue if you take up administration. And I expect the media to tell the story. Today we have given so many leads. Go right to the source, to the teachers themselves. We might be ambassadors, but go to them and hear what the problem is.
What they have to say.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. I think we'll have to wind up right there, but I want to hand over to Zinzi Kibiku. And, Zinzi, your summary of that particular segment on the newsroom.
All right, Michael. Loved the conversation. Of course, for those who didn't join us at the beginning, they had to tackle the issue of racism as well as the signing of contracts within SGR, which is bringing about a lot of questions within the labor laws. And the issue of our schools, our high schools being banned. Should students appreciate the consequences behind it? Should we dig deeper? Is it just beyond the fear of exams? And is there a disconnect between parents as well as teachers and the aspect of role models that we have for our high school students? That's just an overview, an ego view of the conversation that Michael Gitonga has had. Morning Express is taking a quick commercial break, but we'll be right back with so much more for you.